Hi, everybody. Officially, I am terrible at the computer stuff, as you can guess. I am also flying solo tonight. Um, hi, everybody. Welcome to Simply SCAdian. No title required. As always, our mission is to bring you fascinating and interesting people from around the known world who, as of yet, may or may not are pursuing a peerage, haven't gotten a peerage just yet, or whatnot. And why do we focus on those people? That's a question we get a lot of times. Well, because our peers and our various people in the SCA who have achieved that level, we get a lot of press. We spend a lot of time listening to those people, and they have a lot to say, and we love them. And it's not because we don't want to focus on them, but the known world is full of people who are just as interesting, just as knowledgeable, and just as fascinating, and for whatever reason just haven't gotten there yet, or maybe they don't want to. You know those people too. So before I go on with this, I'm going to challenge you like I always do. You need to hit that Facebook page. You need to tell us who we should be talking to. This is a show run by you, essentially. We only facilitate it. So go to that Facebook page, find the form, fill it out for a neighbor, a friend, somebody in your corner of the known world who you think is super fascinating in any area of of what we play here. Fighting is great. I mean, we haven't talked to fighter in a very long time, but fighting and fencing, certainly, any of the martial arts, but of course, anywhere in service, in storytelling, in cooking, in brewing. We've had some wonderful guests on the show over the years. We are about to hit our last show of the season, and I'm afraid you guys kind of failed at my little bet from the beginning. Somebody needed to refer us to somebody overseas. We really want to talk to somebody who's playing the game, but not necessarily here on the continental United States. So get to work on that. Maybe we can network a bit at Penzing, but I think you people you need to get to work. You need to hold up your end of the bargain. We'll talk to them, but you got to point them out. So today on the show, it's a treat for me, guys, because I don't get to kill somebody's Norse name or kill somebody's Welsh name because you're all used to me doing that. Now I get to beat it up in French. So there, okay, don't you wish you were me? Um, but today on the show we have, and I'm gonna try with this one. I have a terrible French accent though. It's not really my strong suit. The Honorable Lady Babet Vitre de Dinan. Am I close? Yeah, I know you're like, yeah, it's not quite it. And that's fine. But the SCA has been part of her life since around 91. Joined in college and found a true friend group, which is kind of a recurring theme here on the show, which we love. Loves to sing, sew, cook, embroider, teach, and especially the children. I think that's going to be the crux of our discussion today, at least for a little bit. Um, and at events either be found in the kitchen or volunteering with Children's Point. In the real world, we kind of talked in the green room a little bit about this, our kind of connection here. But that was a theater costumer, preschool teacher. Babette, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, as always, we will start with our standard first run out question. Babette, how did you find the SCA?
Well, it was my senior year at university, and I liked to walk downtown to go see a movie once in a while, and they were doing a showing of The Princess Bride. And there was a whole row of folks that were dressed up in medieval and Renaissance costumes, and they were so friendly. And I started talking with them, and we watched the show. There was lots of laughter, and they invited me to go out for pizza afterwards. And there are kids my age, and older and a few younger, that were just very enthusiastic about history and the arts and music, which I was a music major at the time. And I started going to the meetings, and I made friends there that I've known ever since. Great friends from the area, in the Red Spears area, and the March of the Marshes. And I met my husband then a couple of years later at Rapier tournament. He came up from the Tyrnawith area, and he and his group were performing music for a masquerade ball that we had after the tournament. And we just sat and talked through the evening and till the sun rose, just everything under the sun. And it'll be 29 years, our anniversary in September. It'll be 29 years of being married. Um,
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
thank you. Um,
So, so how did you get started with children in general then? Like, how did
well,
that, like,
I've always loved working with kids. I used to volunteer as a teacher of children from around the world, just an international program with OSU. And I brought my own children with me, and they met kids from um, Bulgaria and Korea, China, Afghanistan, South America, and I really just fell in love with working with them. So it seemed kind of natural to take that and work with SCA children as well and develop programs where they could start learning about history, and we could explore the medieval arts and crafts in a fun way where it'd be accessible to the little ones. I make a lot of puppets, and I do a lot of research on toys, but mostly I get to be silly and entertained, and at the same time maybe impart some little bit of history with them that they can carry with them to the next event. Just too often I found going to events, especially in the last 10, 15 years, the kids were coming with iPads or a couple Barbies, and we're just sitting in the tents. We're not really interacting with one another and getting bored. So I thought, what's a way that I would engage my children, especially when they were younger, when cell phones weren't really a thing? And we put together a really good group here that really explores possibilities for toddlers and older children together to explore. A lot of SCA children that come to events that come to the Children's Point are quite young. The older ones are more likely to sit with one another and do simple games or, stare at their phones. So we want to make sure that the little ones are in a safe environment. Um, Most of us have the FBI background check. It's quite necessary for Children's Point. And then we create an environment where we have a different project, almost like a real preschool program, where we have a different project interspersed with play and imaginative play and physical things like working with clay or painting. And then other games like Blind Man's Bluff or, you know, London Bridge, and we do beads and and just weaving even is something that we've done during the children's points. Just whatever we can come up with to engage them and get them to interact with one another because they're going to see each other at events again. So we're giving them an opportunity to mix with one another and start building friendships that they might not have an opportunity, especially if they're from different shires or marches and different baronies. And so it was a lot of
so
doing those.
what's your age range?
All the,
Typically, what like do you service?
the youngest we've really had are three, like 2.5 to 3. We found that the children need a kind of independence when they come to Children's Point, where we don't have to worry about diaper changing because it's not a babysitting thing. But we really insist that the parents be able to check in. We always make sure that there's a list of the parents' contact information so that at any one time they'll be able to see the kids or to interact with us, with them. It's more like a service where we offer these projects and ways of for the children to learn something. And a lot of the times now, the parents, at least one of them, will interact with us for 30 minutes to an hour and lend a hand with a different project. We also, have an allergy list to make sure that if we do have snacks there, that the kids aren't going to have a reaction to anything. We never bring like peanuts. I think that's a universal thing to avoid. But sometimes we'll have graham crackers or some juice, cereal bar. And
About how old do you go? What's
well,
the
I've had kids that are young teenagers, like middle school, come in and hang out with us because we're doing things that are fun. We um, we were very fortunate. We were doing, I don't remember if it was Red Dragon or a crown tournament that we were doing, and we did the ANS the day before, and then the tournament, or it might have been a coronation. But we had to prepare things for the children 2 days in a row. So we made sure that we had stacks of things to do, like painting projects. We made spinning tops that they painted themselves. And of course, the next day it would be just fine. And then we did music and movement. And we just want to make sure that even the older teens that join us, if they want to sit down for a project, I have a friend who's also grown up in the SCA, had her kids in the SCA. So she really wanted them to, get out and about and move in and out of things. But they see the projects that we do, like we were spraying designs onto handkerchiefs just for fun. It was very messy. We used like tie dye, and it got on a couple of bits of garb, but it was mostly in fun and it was a successful project. Not something I might do a second time unless I could find something that comes out in the wash. So it'd be a temporary thing. Live and learn. So yeah, like 14 usually. Now I do teaching here in my studio for costuming, and I work with high school and college students. But the SEA Children's Point is really for the younger students and children.
so when you're designing, I would imagine you're going for some kind of like almost like a curriculum, when you're kind of locking that in. How like I mean I guess I have like all the administrative questions. Like is your barony, is your kingdom financing that? Are you getting donations from people? Because certainly there's got to be material costs and things like that.
Well, one of the advantages of being a theater costumer, um, is having many, 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 many boxes of materials. So it's very easy for me to make bean bags and puppets using my felt and scrap fabric. And as far as the resources is, yes, parents actually do give me donations of either materials or money to cover costs. We also have a budget in the barony and in the shire for Children's Point. So we make sure that we can cover the costs. If I suggest, hey, I'd like to do this project and I've done some research and it's going to cost about this much, we make sure that the budget is there. And I talk with the autocrat and like the folks that are in charge of ANS. We look at the theme of the event and see if anyone else is interacting. Like when we had one event, Her Majesty actually brought small boxes. This was for Crown because she brought us small boxes to give to the consorts that were being fought for, and each of the children decorated and painted one of the boxes for that event. So we did the decorating and the painting the day before at the ANS, and then we were able to give them to Her Majesty that evening to give the next day to the consorts, and they really loved those. We had lots
Wonderful.
of rhinestones.
So kind of again, because I feel like this would be a great thing for like a barony to lock into and kind of look at and kind of use what you've got going on as a model. Do you teach a class on this at Penzig or at various things about how to like like essentially how to kind of model this style in other places, because I'll be honest, I haven't seen it like this in other areas of the world. So have you ever kind of thought about kind of, you know uh, formalizing that into a how-to almost?
I
um
I don't think I've thought of doing it, but I'd certainly be happy to share the information. I've only ever gone to one Pensick. Um, I used to work most weekends, so I don't get to many events, and which is a pity because I love traveling and I love seeing friends, and especially like this past um, crown, it was up in my old barony, so that would have been a lot of fun. Um, but now that I have weekends off, I'm getting used to a new routine in my new school, and I'd like to do that. I think there's a lot to be learned on how to interact with our youngest members. I think that carrying that feeling of acceptance and inclusiveness at an early age will help them grow up to feel like the SCA is a place that includes them, where they feel like they have a place too, and not just to kick their feet while their parents are involved, which happen.
you you also, along with the crafts, then sort of reinforce some of the more, I don't know, I'll use the word chivalric, but the more kind of philosophical or precepts of things like that we're kind of striving for in the SCA. Do you
Well,
kind of like start teaching those at a young age too, or?
oh, certainly. We've even invented, I'm always getting information and sharing ideas with the other ladies who help me, and the gentles that are a part of our barony. The gentlemen too. Um, Count Ulrich and his lady Katie have been great resources to talk with. And oh my goodness, Honora and Artemisia, who work with me in Children's Point so often. We sit down and talk about what we want our kids to learn from. My two are grown up now, but they still have children at the right age. So they're, that, and then my work with preschoolers, we're always able to come up with curricula that will engage the children and not overwhelm them, but keep their interest for these hour-long, um, afternoons. They are going to be there from early morning-ish to afternoon, and they're going to interact with their parents sometimes. But again, we want to be a resource for the families while they're there. So they can pop in and leave whenever they feel like they had a good adventure, a good visit. Although sometimes the kids don't want to leave. And so those afternoons, we try and make it easy for them to say goodbye by giving them the hand puppets or something that they've made as something to remember it by.
So when you're designing your craft, like when you're looking at your craft, how period do you try to keep it? I mean, and do you research? I mean, you said something about researching period toys, but I mean,
Mhm.
like how, sort of, by the book do you keep it? How period do you keep it? Or do you not concern yourself with that, and it's more about engagement?
We try to consider the resources that we have, but I also consider where these toys came from. There's I like to think it's never too early to talk about what something is. And you know, I know that the kids are going to be more involved with the actions and the product of what they're making, but I'm still a teacher, so I'm thinking about the process. Early, gosh, I think it was Homer that was talking about spinning like a top on the battlefields. And we were able to do some research, and I played around with fruit and apples and like chopsticks and made great spinning tops just from things that we had on hand. And then we had the kids decorate modern ones, that they were able to get from China. But that kind of lesson stays with them because it's a physical thing. They saw me create the top out of the stick in an apple. It's something that they're going to have on hand, And then they were able to play with it and try it their own selves. So that's working with their fine motor skills and, decorating something, which is using their imagination to create the colors that they want. So I try to incorporate all these different things, but tops is just one of them. Using like otedama for juggling, so making juggling balls, but also just going back and forth. So larger motor skill development. And then number games that we do where we can like toss something, and there's so many ways to reference the Middle Ages and the Renaissance in children's play. I mean, so many of our own nursery rhymes come from century-old children's books. So it's not too big of a stretch to use history as a way to engage the little ones because it's something that's already there. We don't have to reinvent stories. We don't have to reinvent games. They're already there, and we can pull them from all around the world so that they can see that they're part of a global community as well as a historical community. So I try and bring those in. And I'm learning along with the kids when I'm doing the research. And I'm always finding something that's fun to introduce to them. I don't think I'll ever run out of ideas.
So what's the most interesting kind of out of the box like toy that you found in your research period, or something that you were like, wow, I didn't know that this was, you know, like that early, or that, or kind of created here, or something that's completely like, wow, we don't even do this anymore and this was amazing, like just something like that.
Well, that's the thing. Kids are always going to find something to play with. So they're always going to be engaged on building blocks and play with dolls. They're always going to want games where they can throw something or scramble around to pick something up. So the running games where they're playing tag or, freeze tag or hiding something, these are games that I've read about in historical books, in extant literature, the translations from the Italian and the French and the German. Um, that children have been doing forever. The things that we have the least amount of extant information really are the physical things that children, because they're so rough with toys, they're always breaking things. But there are examples of clay animals that we'll find in little grave sites and little rag dolls that we'll see. And then, as we go forward in illustrations, you'll see a little child holding a doll, a very rough kind of doll, but it's there. It's not, you don't think of it, it's just as a burial thing then. You know that is something that they probably cherished and they probably played with. Um, we don't have as many early examples of peasantry, but more of the paintings that you'll see, you're going to see balls and hoops and jacks, sheep knuckles are going to be used as like for scooping, and then they're used in gambling too, but the kids would have picked them up to play with. In early Greece, you saw little marbles, probably played with by the children, small balls of clay, and tiny animals that were carved out of clay to make like a chicken or a rooster or some like farm animals. Um, and then you're also going to see like scraps of embroidery on, just very short pieces on something that's like kind of a doll. And these are going back way before the Middle Ages and Renaissance, making small icons of things. And I don't think they were always used for religion. I'm sure, like the temple toys in India, where somebody would bring something in to like put in the temple as a wish, or asking the deities for something. The kids end up playing with them. And, so it's a rough bit of bronze that's got a horse and a little fellow riding along with that. That's a toy. You're going to
Hmm.
see examples all around the world of toys.
So it's just fascinating. So how, I mean, again, that I'm trying to reconcile how much of, like, is that, like, to me as an adult, that's like super fascinating. But that's, you're not really bringing that. I mean, you're bringing that knowledge into the classroom and sort of recreating that experience without kind of teaching the experience. I would imagine that that's kind of how you're doing it. You're making dolls in in your modern way with scrap fabric, but it's emulating
It,
that kind of style. Yeah.
um, okay, so for example, we had a box of clay and we were talking to the kids about creating their early animal. Um, and so they were building and playing with the clay, and it got smushed. And one young lady was very, very distraught until we reminded her that early sculptors had many, many attempts at building something. And so we were able to take that moment where we were talking about Michelangelo or Rodin, and I love talking about the French. But going back to other early sculptures and very early sculptures, it's like, this is just your first attempt. You're going to keep making this. So again, I went back to teaching process and not just the product. So now you know that the legs don't work out this way. Let's try a better one. And, let them take it home and they can keep working with it. Um, there's no reason why I can't interpret, or there's no reason why we can't take each of these parts, the sculpture that we can show them an example of from the past, um, and it's a replica, and give them an opportunity to create their own, and then learn from that opportunity and the mistakes that come with it, and give them a chance to say, I'm not being graded for this. I don't have to see this as the final product. I can keep working on it until I make it better. And that's a really valuable learning experience for them to take this, to see that it's just the beginning and they can keep working that clay until they're happy with it. And that they can apply that later in life to all sorts of lessons.
What's the Do you have a favorite or a craft that is usually very successful that you return to with the
I,
kids?
I really love painting fans, especially in the summer. It's we can order paper fans and the children can use watercolors. This was a Japanese class I taught, and they're able to use the watercolors to make a very dreamy fan on the paper, and then it dries very quickly. And then they have just something nice to fan themselves with. It's a simple lesson, but we can show them pictures of the different households and how things evolved in the garden varieties and flowers, especially flowers, and creating their own flowers. And the older kids were really happy to experiment with those and to play with that. So that's one I liked coming back to. Spinning tops is another one that's really fun to come back to because it's not frenetic, but um, it's something you can play with even as you're decorating it. Yes, it's messy, but it's just something that's so engaging and it just keeps going. I try to make sure I always have the really good ones to just turn and spin. It seems to make them laugh and get excited. And the puppet shows, because they're so inventive. I've made a big group of puppets for them, and it's a lot of fun watching them recreate the story or invent their own afterwards. So I'm usually making lots of different puppet designs for them, just simple hand puppets, not too complicated, but they like to create their own stories. So I'm always making more puppets.
Now I know before I start asking about kitchen stuff, and your love of the kitchen, I know
Mhm.
you grabbed a riddle book. How do you incorporate those riddles into the class, and what are some of the riddles that you use? Because I know you grabbed that prior to us.
Sure. Um, so that's something we like to do. Another thing that we've done is cookie decorating. Like in with the theme of the event, like we had a chess theme for an event. So I got some chess piece cookie cutters and they were able to decorate those. And while they were decorating them, we were able to do the riddles. And the easiest way to do the riddles is to have like, hear the riddle and then we can all answer together. And most of the riddles are rhymed riddles. So if we think about it for a little bit, it's easy to come up with an answer. So I've got the paper right here. Let's
And
uh, this fellow loves pranks and misrule. Clever jokes and great wit are his tool. His stories and jests delight all the guests. This gentle may be a great fool.
cool, yeah, okay.
This is my this is
In fact, so in my other life, I was a Renaissance Festival performer.
oh
And for 3 years I was the fool at a festival, and
uh,
I was admiring your motley very much. So, but that's very clever. I like that as sort of an engaging, mental tool as they're going through the process of making something. I love the fact that you are more about process than product, because I think that that is a very good thing to teach kids. Being an educator myself, they're often caught up in the grade, and
yes,
and not did you learn something from that, rather than, what did I earn for this?
yes.
So I really do appreciate that. This is just wonderful stuff. I'm glad. As always, everybody, this will end up on the YouTube page. And But I think it's a resource. I think Barney should look at this, and whatnot, because I don't think there is enough attention paid to that. I mean, I live what I consider to be a wonderful barony, the barony of Setmore Swamp, in New Jersey, and we had what I would consider to be our children's event, which is something we call Quest. And we have a quest on Sunday. It's sort of a gathering of like 12 challenges that you can go do in teams. This one was all based in Celtic myth. But they go and they have to do that. They have to create a song. They have to do a shadow puppet thing. They have to, and some of the challenges are physical. But our barony, as far as that's concerned, is a little small. We only had three children's teams this
Oh,
year. You know what I mean? So it felt a little tiny. Our the kids are getting older, and I don't know that there are that many kids coming in to the barony. So, but I love everything I'm hearing about how you've kind of established this very kind of kinesthetic approach to Children's Point. It's really wonderful. Again, we're moving through time here, so I do want to ask, so your love of the kitchen, what is that, and do you cook for events, or have you ever event like feastocrated or anything like that, or kind
oh
of?
yeah. Um, we have a wonderful team of cooks here in Tiernawyth in the Middle Marches. You may have heard of Team Anubis, Mistress Gwyneth, Magister Malachi, Mistress Rosemarian. They're all involved. Baroness Chandara, she loves to come in and cook. There's so many great cooks here that I've had so much patience just learning in the kitchen and building a feast. They could teach you so much about feast prep and creating a calm kitchen. So I really loved doing that. It is hard work. You are on your feet for a long time. But the kitchens that I've been in there with them are very calm. Everything is scheduled. And if things don't go the way you wanted them to go, there's always a solution. And um, those people are great teachers. So I've been very fortunate to run a feast with my friend Camille. Not I'm trying to think of her SCA right now. She hasn't been active for a bit, but and I love to cook. I've always loved cooking international cuisines, and I have probably started incorporating a lot of our feast cuisine into our home cooking, so our meals at home. So we will have Moroccan chicken and egg and cheese tarts here at home. I've made custards and fools here. um, we make love making sauce verjus or sauce vert for a chicken dish just to kick it up. You can learn a lot from using these recipes because you are creating a meal for your family. So it's a very practical skill. You know, it's a little less cerebral and a little more rewarding for the palate.
Do you have a favorite sort of period or area that you kind of like to keep returning to, or are you just kind of internationally, it's kind of all
I love to cook Indian curries, and you can't make just one curry. And then Tudor, like tavern cooking, is a lot of fun. There are so many fun pies and pasties and little. I like desserts. I love playing with sweets and subtleties and turning one thing into something else.
Tudor Tavern food sounds right up my alley. That's right. That's where I would definitely eat if I could all the time. That sounds awesome. What event that you did you cook for? What was that?
Oh, it was a 12th night again
12th night.
for the barony. Um, and we just had a wonderful, again, it was a perfect afternoon. It was almost balmy for a January.
Mm.
We were able to go outside and rest in between prep time. So we just made a very simple tavern meal. We had roasted chicken and the two sauces, and we had a nice dish to go along with it. And I liked cabbages and apples. And we made some galettes, which is very simple. And then I had a really good cherry jam to go in. Um, well, I got little sourdough bowls because sweet and savory always paired together in English cooking. So we made a cherry jam to go in basically a fromage au croûte, a brie, just hollow out the bread and put a wheel of brie in there and have the cherry jam all around it. And then you could just pull it apart, you know, one per table or two per tables. And I just went to Panera and got the bowls, like all the bowls for one day. I ordered them for this feast because 12th night is a smaller of assembly of friends. And it was perfect. It was such a great.
Wonderful. We have I'm going to ask you about kitchen horror stories in a minute because I'm going to tell you one to get one. I have only ever autocrated one event for my barony. That's not for lack of trying. It's just we have a thing we call Black Griffin Inn. And again, it's a smaller event. It's kind of a food event. It's no martial events or anything. We do our Bardic Champion competition at it and whatnot. We went to a location we'd used many times before, and they told us, "Oh, well, we're going to redo the floors of the kitchen." Oh, it's great. Okay, wonderful. I arrived the morning of with my daughter to start loading in. My wife is the feastocrat. And she's coming in a little bit. Floor is beautiful, but there are no stoves, no counters. There's no sinks. There's no range tops. They had removed the entire room was just floor. Just floor. There's nothing. There was nothing to cook on or cook with or near or anything like that. And again, through the power of a wonderful place, uh, uh, the members brought camp stoves, with big 3 burner propane stoves and whatnot. And luckily, it was a nicer day. They cooked outside, and whatnot. And luckily, too, they had done a lot of the prep work. Have you ever encountered a kitchen disaster in your prep work?
Oh my goodness. So we were at a campsite in Ohio, and The stove stopped working partially, like halfway through making the quiches. We were making a cheese, an egg and cheese tarts for everybody. And one of the stoves just went. So we had so many left to cook, or were undercooked, or barely cooked. And we put feast back by about 30 minutes. And I think we cut the slices of the done ones in halves. So we didn't have to worry about poisoning the guests. Um, but they would never have known it. And that was such a fun event anyway. It was my first event back in the SCA after a few years being absent. And it was my birthday too. And so we
Oh,
put our whole, our whole souls into creating something beautiful in that kitchen. But it was a challenge at the end of the day.
oh, that's wonderful. Oh my God. So so you kept saying you were kind of in and out of the SCA. Was
Well,
it travel or just family or
yep, when your
yeah.
kids are up, um, and as a theater customer, I had a lot of weekends and long nights working with the theaters, so I wasn't able to go to the meetings all the time, especially when my kids were very young, and I was more involved with them too. So we drifted in and out, and then over the past maybe 12 years we've been very strongly involved. And um the SCA had changed a lot. It has it has grown so much, and in such a good way. There's so much more extant knowledge. There's so much more ease of research. Meeting people with incredible knowledge bases. Before, when we were involved in the SCA, it was still very difficult to come up with original sources for research. And now, to become a master or of the laurel, it's like getting your master's degree in something, because you can become such an expert. And I have met so many amazing researchers who are doing just that. And it's really inspiring.
Hmm.
And so I really love the new SCA that we've gotten re-involved in. It's it's beautiful. The people are open about their research. They are open about things that they're pursuing and passionate about. And it's not just in the arts, the chivalry too. I'm meeting people who take very, very seriously the levels that you want to pursue in excellence in building prowess, building humility, building that family that acknowledges that the real basis for our service is really what can we do for others. And that's such a nice thing. Mm, it used to be more playful, and it used to be more flirty, and the costuming wasn't always as accurate, but we had a lot of fun. And but the new SCA that I've been involved in, it really is a historical society. It has a lot to be proud of, and I'm happy to be a part of this too.
Awesome. Well, I guess I mean we're getting close to the 8:50 mark. I
Oh my.
feel like this is I see. I told you that you just why do we talk and then you're like, wow, look at the time. Um, so I guess this is the perfect time to ask. Although I think I'm gonna ask a mundane follow-up question that I wouldn't normally ask, but since I'm a theater geek, I want to ask you a personal question after we're done. But what I'll ask you our final question that we do on the show, everyone knows, is what then can we as the SCA do better? I mean, you said obviously there's just been this sort of market change. What can we do to grow more? What do you think?
Oh, I think I think that the people that are coming into the SCA now are the ones that made it strong when I was younger, and it's the university groups. They are the ones that are leading the charge of building the university network, that they are reaching out to newcomers and being more inclusive. It used to be really hard for a newcomer to get involved in an established group. So having these activity fairs, still doing demos, and being really organized, having an actual administrative, strong administrative area, especially with the web ministers. I mean, using the internet now, making sure that we reach out to new people in the areas. I think the SCA is doing a lot of good going forward with the newer memberships. I just want to make sure that it's always accessible to our younger people, our people with physical and mental health needs, and that we're able to address that too, to make sure that everyone feels included and that we're representing so many people now from all around the world, because early modern Europe is just the tip of the historical research that we can be doing. I've met so many people now who are interested in African research and Middle Eastern research and Asian research and Nordic research, and not just England, France, Germany, Italy, and Scotland. So it's very exciting.
Funny you bring that up because I was having that discussion with somebody over the weekend. Just how, I mean, again, this might be a much deeper issue, and we'll go all hours. But is there a way you think you could foster in people that idea of cultural appreciation is not cultural appropriation? Because there's a lot of times where people in the SCA don't want to study something that doesn't really match them because they don't want to feel like they are, you know, appropriating or whatnot. But that cultural appreciation is where we learn about another culture. Do you have any thoughts on how, to foster that in people? Or
Well, sure. And it really comes down to the educator's viewpoint. When you approach another culture respectfully, with curiosity and a will to gain knowledge, to better appreciate and understand the culture, if you start from, just from scratch, and then you build better and better as you go along, because everybody's a beginner, then as long as the respect is there for the culture and the curiosity leads you to that, I don't think appropriation is going to be something to be worried about. There's so much extant research out there. So if you spend, a month or two to understand how to build a pair of hakama, but you start out with a simplicity pattern, you're taking your first steps. Then if you pick up a book on it, Japanese culture and building armor, you might start out with plastic and then work up to leather. You might start out with shoelaces and then work up your way to using one of the wheels to make your own. What is it? Otedama? No. Kumihimo. You know, you are taking your steps forward. You know, respect and appreciation going with curiosity and a love of the culture. That's how you build your persona.
that's lovely. All right, so now here's my personal question. As a costume designer, costume maker for theater, what is your favorite thing that you've worked on, designed?
Oh,
What's your, like, oh, this was my wheelhouse.
that is actually a very easy question because my favorite will always be Petrushka. I was doing this campy uh, Cole Porter review, and the director decided to set it on a cruise ship that had hit an iceberg. And so they were trying to entertain the passengers that are waiting on the iceberg. And so the director asked,
Kind of an anything goes by way of Titanic. So, all right, good.
yeah. So the director asked me if I could build a polar bear for one of the actors who's quite tall, and to do like a waltz with one of the other singers. And it took me about a month and a half of research, but I used like a clown costume, and I made the paws and the feet, and I used taxidermy eyes and a taxidermy nose for a polar bear. And Petrushka, I named him Petrushka, the clown. Um, he's so big and fuzzy, and he's got a big zipper up the back that folds over and is hidden, and he's just the most cuddliest, biggest thing you've ever seen. You put the head on, it's all attached, one thing, and you step into it from the back to the front, and then the head I built using foam cushion to then in a baseball cap with the bill removed. So the head sits up on top of your head, and then there's a screen here in the neck for you to actually look out and see with. And he has moved on in his life from there to becoming the mascot for the Dominion Middle School polar bears. So he's gone on in life to live happily with a bunch of kids again.
That's incredible.
We're proud of that.
Awesome. Well, Babette, it's been so wonderful talking to you. I mean, I think your insight into how we treat and foster children in the SCA is just something that's truly admirable. So I appreciate you taking the time tonight to talk to us.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So everybody, before we close out, next Thursday for us will be the 12th. That is our final show of the season. We're putting it together for you. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but we are going to be talking about a recent update in the SCA with our panel. As you know, the last show we tried to put together a panel to discuss, something big that's going on in the SCA, or something that requires a few more viewpoints. So hopefully that's going to pan out for us. I think that's going to be really exciting. We'll try to get that out to you as soon as we can. But for next year, we're already taking submissions. So please remember, get out there, hit up that Facebook page. Let us know who should we be talking to more people like that. All right. So thank you, and have a great night.
Good night.
There we go.